Sasoi, become the motor. Hey folks, and welcome to another Sasoi spikeboarding demonstration tutorial. We're going to show you a little loop here in Orange County in the lower Hudson Valley. And a lot of you are going to know and recognize this descent, and if you don't, you're going to know descents very similar to them, which descend straight down into the river, toward the river at the bottom of the lower Hudson Valley, and they're about 100 feet off the water, and they provide nice little downhill uphills for us to do some spikeboarding loops. So what you're seeing is the cadence break in spikeboarding. And believe me, folks, we are working with mechanical engineers now to make a fully operational disc brake for what will be known as a spike board. And so hold on tight and we'll get to you within a year and a half or so. We'll be prototyping devices that brake comfortably 30 to 55 miles an hour, no problem. And then it will still be important to have a cadence brake. So when you're traveling at between 5 and 18 miles an hour, it's always nice to be able to just put your feet down, put your head back, put your shoulders back, and do the opposite of what you would normally do when you're kicking. But as you can see, the setup for the supporting leg is the same. So you still need to set up that foot. That foot needs to be straight, and you need to register every time before you get up onto it that it is secure and that the ball of the foot and the heel are all ready to stand up on. In other words, you can't just put feet down and have them be at 45 degrees and then stand up on them. So every time this athlete places his foot down, he's registering and making sure that there's some biofeedback that says, yep, you're ready to stand up on there. So that's the same as whether or not you'd be pushing forward or actually in this case, you're braking backwards. Notice how the heel is dropping first. So he's not dropping onto the ball of the foot. He's dropping onto the heel of the foot and keeping the hips back, keeping the head over the shoulders over the hips, and dropping down and keeping the speed in check and staying under easily 13 miles an hour. So here's the railroad track, and we're coming up on it. We're just going to kick the board over, and no problem, but looks like maybe, well, we've got a train. So we'll wait for that train, and then we'll come on through, kick the board over, and scooch along down here by the river, what's probably called River Road. Wherever you live, whatever road is down by the river tends to be pan flat and is always a good place for beginners as well. So there's a little bit of one-handed action, and that was a little stand-up spike stroke that you saw here. Primarily in this video, you're going to be seeing a kubi cross stroke, which is when the upper body spikes with one arm in conjunction with the lower body, and it kicks together and synchronizes. And of course, then you've got 1/2, which is one-armed action, and that can occur when both feet are on the board, and you're only spiking with one arm. And we're just sort of casually going over that railroad track there, and gearing up our kubi cross and synchronizing our skateboard strike with our leg kick. So the lower half of a kubi cross is a switch kick. Or you could be out here switch kicking and have nothing in your hands, and that sport's been around for many a decade. Very few people practice that sport. Just recently, some people have begun to practice, say for instance 30 to 100, and really proficiently at these kinds of speeds. Probably 25 or 40 people maximum worldwide are switch kicking. Some people do go out there and race. But let me tell you folks, once you learn to switch kick and you begin to do some stand-up spike stroke and develop your core and your lats and your shoulders, you're going to enjoy the kubi cross stroke, which is the advent of, as you can see, this cross-country ski motion combined with the skateboard kick. And we try to keep the cadence between 3-2, 3-2-10, that kind of thing. Try to keep it completely even if you can. There's a stand-up spike stroke, and when things get turbulent on the pavement and it's a little squirrely standing on one leg. Spikeboarders instantly can maintain their propulsion with the stand-up spike stroke, and that's the beauty of what this athlete has in his hand, called a skateboard spike. So from the handle down, it is a ski pole, absolutely, and it has the same carbide steel spike tip that World Cup cross-country skiers use. It's about a 2-centimeter piece of carbide, sharpened every 2 to 3 hours, and then it bites very well into asphalt. From the handle up, it's a very unique device, and you cannot stand-up spike with any good performance. And of course, to go in between the stand-up spike stroke and the Kubi cross stroke flawlessly with a tremendous amount of performance, that's the only device on the face of the planet that's going to do that. And if you doubt us, that's no problem. Those doubts are always resolved with racing. So with racing, all equipment, all athletes are tested, even in motorsport, down to tennis, you name it. Performance dictates what is and what is not reality. So a skateboard spike is unmatched in stand-up spike performance, as well in Kubi cross. If you want to transition to stand-up spike, that device right there, a skateboard spike made by Sosoi, the original, is what you're going to need. So we've made our left-hand turn here. We're going to do a little climb up out of the river. Look how gorgeous that Lower Hudson Valley is in the distance. Absolutely stunning. This topography is absolutely ancient. The hills are round, majestic, and probably predate human activity. So it's absolutely beautiful here in the Lower Hudson Valley, and the athletes climbing with a Kubi cross, keeping the cadence even, and as you'll see, watch the feet, a forward drift every time that he switches. So there's the forward drift, and that of course is facilitated by a spike board. And a spike board these days, of course, is a skateboard that has been optimized for spike boarding, and that would mean that the board has a full 3-inch drop. It's incredibly stable. It's actually just a motor mount for the athlete. So this athlete is not at too crazy high a tempo, but right now he's probably pumping about 145 beats per minute, and they just want to put their feet down and have it be stable. They don't want to catch a wheel with their feet. They don't want to spike a wheel with their skateboard spike, and they want plenty of space on that deck. So that deck might look long, but the size foot on that athlete's 9.5. There's only about 5 inches left on that deck. So actually spike boards will need to be made a little bit longer for taller people, a little bit shorter for the shorter folks. So he's making short order of this climb. This climb's about 13% grade, 14% grade in some places, and starting to flatten out here. Notice how the speed begins to pick up. Cross-country skiers, that's where this sport originally came from. There's a little stand-up spike. They harness about 70% of the energy that goes into the road from their upper body. So the upper body can develop a tremendous amount of forward propulsion on slippery boards, especially when you're going up hills. So to go up hills without using a shaft on a board wouldn't make much sense at all. That would make about as much sense as roller skiing up a summit without your ski poles. So a skateboard spike, ski poles, they function very similarly. They're harnessing a great deal of energy and being very efficient when you're on a slippery board. There's a stand-up spike stroke, and when things get a little rough on the pavement, a little crocodile-y, then you want to hit that stand-up spike stroke, and that's going to help you out. We're going to pop up right here and take our last spike. Don't spike that driveway. That's the firemen. They top coat that every year. So we respect that, and back out onto the street and spiking clean asphalt that's been made to drive on with heavy loads. Folks, that's what breaks up pavement, so don't ever think that a spike tip could actually harm asphalt. It's compression from tonnage and heat and cold expansion contraction that will wreak havoc on pavement. Pavement is malleable, it's soft. it's self-healing. So again, that spike tip's been used at World Cup for 30 years, manufactured by a dozen ski companies and sold worldwide. So that's the story with the spike tip. Coming across here in the flat top of this high side, we're going to pass where we originally started, and then you're in for a little treat here because we're going to show you how velo spiking actually stops the board. So velo spiking is nothing other than knowing high performance cycling and high performance spikeboarding, and also it can be done in conjunction with a partner. So if you have a partner on a bike, then they can give you brake on whatever it is you're going down. So what you're about to see is that same descent where we started, and giving a thank you to the folks back there being so patient. One of them actually was just turning in. So here we go. We're going to come down this same descent, and we're just going to push into the lower back of the cycling athlete and push them forward, and then keep asking for brakes. So the moment that the spikeboarder pushes the cyclist forward, the cyclist actually starts to squeeze his brakes already. So this bicycle is a flat bar bike with fully operational disc brakes front and back. So it's got tremendous amounts of grip. Imagine that it's slowing down a little under 400 pounds with combined weight between both the athletes. We're doing 25 miles an hour as we come down this descent, or probably about 25 miles an hour. I wouldn't say too much faster. Actually, every time we go in, we're about 20 miles an hour, say, and then we pull back, come down to about 13 miles an hour, and we'll be right down here at the bottom once again, and we will say goodbye as soon as we cross this railroad track. So here's the steepest little section. As you saw, went down the whole thing, and the athlete only switched from one side to the other and never touched the ground. Here comes the railroad track. Folks, we hope you've enjoyed this video, and see you at the next one. Spike hard, spike off, and spike boarding. So soy, become the motor.